Well, good afternoon. I'm Chris Scherer, Member Communications Director of the Society of Broadcast Engineers and the co-host of this month's episode of the SBE WEBxtra, the SBE chapter of the web. This is a monthly SBE meeting usually held on the third Monday of the month. The SBE is the Association for Broadcast and Multimedia Technology Professionals with about 5,000 members, mostly in the U.S., but also around the world. The SBE WEBxtra is sponsored by Catrine. Catrine, unique experience, individual solutions, reliable performance. The host of today's SBE WEBxtra is SBE board member Kirk Harnack, who is also the chair of the SBE Social Networking Committee. How you doing, Kirk?
I am good. Thank you, Chris. I hope you're well, too. And welcome into this edition of the SBE WEBxtra, the last one for the year 2020. And I think a lot of us will probably be glad to see 2020 go, although I've been informed today that look out because the 20 turns 21 next year and is old enough for a lot of things. So we'll have to watch out. We have a wonderful guest today, and that is John Poray. You know, John has been the executive director of the SBE for, I believe it's close to 30 years, but we'll bring John in a few minutes and talk to John. Well, let's say hi right now because we want to introduce John and tease his appearance on the show in a few minutes. John, welcome into the WEBxtra.
Thank you, Kirk. Good to be here today and both with you and Chris.
Well, we're looking forward to talking to you. We have another feature on today's show. Not only John Poray, who I'm sure you've heard. If you haven't heard, you haven't been reading your emails. John Poray is retiring as the executive director of the SBE, and John is going to share with us some key moments from his career, and that means the SBE's journey into continuing to represent and support broadcast engineers in radio, television, and allied media fields. So that's coming up, a chat with John Poray, some great pictures from over the years, but also we have Ralph Hogan on the show today, appearing by a previous interview that we did last week. Ralph will be talking to us about a new certification that's available from SBE, and he's got some good information about that and a certification that's well worthwhile for a number of SBE members. But first, there's always a but first. But first, let's toss it back to Chris Scherer for our member update. Chris?
Yep, thanks, Kirk. Here is your SBE member update for December 21, 2020. SBE chapters make note if you are meeting virtually, you should still report those meetings to the SBE National Office, just as you would with an in-person meeting. These meetings still count towards the minimum 5 held per calendar year, which are necessary to qualify for the annual chapter rebate. So be sure to get your meeting reports in. On the education side, with the new year around the corner, the SBE is launching a new series in Webinars by SBE, the 2021 IP Networking Series. The first 3 parts are already on the schedule. Part 1 is Network Topology and Standards. That airs on January 21. Part 2 is a focus on Ethernet switching, which airs February 25. And Part 3 is a focus on Everything Layer 3, which airs on March 25. Wayne Pacina leads the webinars. We also have another one in the schedule for January 28, MA3, All Digital AM, Things to Know. The FCC authorized stations to use MA3 in October, and there are plenty of questions and lots of misunderstandings. Jeff Welton of Nautel has all the answers. Jeff was involved in the first all-digital tests done by the NAB, and he has installed dozens of AM/HD radio systems. He shares his firsthand experience in this webinar. For more information on webinars by SBE, go to sbe.org/webinars. On the certification side, the next SBE certification exam window at local chapters is February 5 to 15, 2021. The application deadline is December 31, 2020. This exam window will be the first opportunity to take the new SBE ATSC 3 Certification Specialist exam. Be the envy of your colleagues. Be one of the first to obtain this new benchmark. The complete 2021 SBE certification exam schedule is available on the SBE website. And if a local chapter exam is not convenient for you or just not possible because of COVID restrictions, private proctoring is available. More information on SBE certification is online at sbe.org/certification. And officially launching on January 1st, the SBE has unveiled a new program designed to help new technical talent gain the knowledge they need to enter broadcast and media engineering on a fast track. The SBE Technical Professional Training Program bundles several SBE programs and services into a single registration. SBE Member Plus, SBE CBT Certification, SBE Cert Preview, and the SBE Mentor Program, and the SBE Broadcast Engineering Handbook are all included. Stations, groups, and networks can support new talent with the Technical Professional Training Program. Get more information on it at sbe.org/TPT. And that is your SBE member update for December 21, 2020. Kirk?
Thank you very much, Chris Shearer. Appreciate that. Communications Director for SBE, and you certainly do a lot to get those words out. I want to encourage you as SBE members to check out the new SBE website. I've got it kind of blown up here on this monitor, but it has been a terrific effort, and Chris is doing a lot to take care of it now and adding great information to it. So it's sbe.org, of course, has always been the URL, but it's a new looking site now, and just it's really nicely laid out. All right, that said, let us move into our conversation with John Poray. John, welcome in, and you're coming to us from your COVID-free home in Indianapolis, aren't you?
That's right. I'm coming from the SBE bunker in just west of Indianapolis.
John, there are plenty of SBE members who have never had the opportunity to meet you. They've seen your name, I'm sure, signed a lot of letters, a lot of outgoing communication, and heard your name a lot. But if you could, before we jump into all these pictures and some highlights from the last few years, tell me a little bit about what an executive director does for an organization like SBE.
Sure, Kirk. Well, primarily the SBE executive director is there to take care of the day-to-day aspects of the organization. Our board of directors is responsible for policies and governing the society. But they hire an executive director to carry out the responsibilities day to day, and that includes hiring our staff and overseeing our operations. So in our organization, it's a relatively small for a national association with 7 staff, which means I'm pretty much a generalist. You got to know a little bit about a lot of things, maybe not a lot about any one thing, but I'm pretty good at being a generalist.
One of the things, John, and I've had the splendid opportunity to be in a lot of SBE board meetings as an elected board member with you, and I'm just so impressed by how you carry out the executive directorship position in that the board will propose doing something. And you seem to jump in there, and sure, there's committees that do fact finding and make some decisions and try to set a course. But when it comes to coming up with options or implications of taking a certain course of action, starting a new program, for example, when we started the Member Plus program, you provided a wealth of information. You looked at all these different kind of scenarios financially and how we could best benefit our members. And you do an incredible task of presenting the board of directors with options, and even options that I don't know if you may personally think are a little bit crazy, a little bit off the beaten path, but you put a positive note on every one of them, and you find out, if we did this, how would this work? If we did this, how would this work? What would be the legal implications of this and this? Well, what about the fiduciary responsibilities that we have toward the organization and its members? And I just got to say, I did not know a few years ago what an executive director did, and honestly, I really think I've seen about the best there must be. So thank you very much for presenting that kind of thing. Could you elaborate just a bit more on what I just said? Where the board has an idea, maybe the president of the SBE will have an idea of what he or she would like to do moving forward, or a new program, and how you respond to that, giving back factual data as to what the viable options are.
Well, sure. Again, our role is really to help our volunteers, our board of directors on a national basis be successful. And they all have full-time jobs. They're very busy people. And when they come together for a board of directors meeting, even this year when it's via Zoom, they depend on our staff to provide them with backup information, with guidance as we go along, and just do the research that it takes ahead of time, and then counsel them, if you will, or guide them on what the options are, and put them in the best position to make a knowledgeable decision on which way to go.
John, you're not a broadcast engineer, but in your position, you don't need to be. Tell me about what kind of qualifications that an executive director in an organization like this typically has, or what you have.
Well, sure. I'm my whole career has been in management of nonprofit organizations. And a lot of people don't realize that, but that actually is a profession. I belong to the American Society of Association Executives. It has some 20,000 members around the country doing the things that I do. They're either CEOs or staff members of nonprofit associations and other kinds of nonprofit groups. I actually went to college and got a major in youth agency administration, which was all about nonprofit management, and went to work for the Boy Scouts of America in a local council in Columbus, Ohio, and did that for about 7 years before I transitioned to what I would call mainstream association work, and worked for a couple of different trade associations, first in Ohio, then in Indiana. A short stint at Kiwanis International, another nonprofit, before landing at SBE 28 plus years ago.
I've got to imagine that managing a bunch of youth and teenagers is not so different than the occasional dust up at one of our board meetings.
Well,
Hey,
it was the best training ground you could have. And of course, I didn't really work with kids very much. I worked with the adults that ran the programs on a district and council level. And it was, as I said, a great training ground for what was to come later in my career.
we've got a lot of pictures to share with folks, and we're going to be covering a bit about SBE history, SBE accomplishments, both accomplishments of John Poray himself and also of the SBE over the past some years, political action and how that plays into the SBE's role and mission, and also building toward certification. So without much further ado, John, we've got a bunch of pictures to share, but each one has a story. So why don't we jump into those pictures? If we get our producer Suncast to pop. Okay, John, I'll just let you narrate here. What are we looking at?
All right. Well, this is a picture of a typical board of directors meeting, the National SBE board meeting. This is several years ago at the Westgate Hotel, right next door to the Las Vegas Convention Center. And on the opposite end, you can see our president that year, Jim Leifer. And I'm just to his right, your left, as you're looking at it. But all around the table, there are mostly volunteers. There are a few staff members at the table as well, but volunteers that come and on their own nickel, for the most part, spend time working on SBE policy and discussion. And that meeting that day would typically be a 3.5 hour meeting. But it's kind of representative of all the people that have served at that level. Certainly in my time with SBE, there's hundreds of them that have been on the board that have come and gone, and some for as many as 12, 15 years over a couple of different board stints. So it's always been a great group of people to work with.
3.5 hours. I tell you, John, it didn't feel like a minute over 210 minutes. All right, what's next here?
Well, this is also at an NAB show in Las Vegas, probably 7 or 8 years ago. This is in the convention center, and it's our membership meeting held every year during the show, which of course we didn't get to do this year in 2020, not live in person, anyways. But it was a great crowd, as you can see. Pretty well filled the room, and you can't see the front of the room with where the podium is and so on, but. Just again, it's a great opportunity at that show to bring at least some of the members of SBE who are attending in the same room, and that kind of segues right into I think the next slide, Kirk, which is after you had the meeting, let's get together and let's socialize a little SBE reception. And we started doing these about a half a dozen years ago, and wished we'd done it far longer than that, because it really became a great opportunity just for people to reacquaint with each other, people they hadn't seen maybe in years, and just have a good time.
Great to meet people, and to, when you know somebody, you can get their information, maybe call them later, and if you have a problem or a question, this is the way people network. So that's a great time to get together. What's next? What's our next picture here?
Well, this goes back probably about 13 or 14 years ago, and obviously it's the U.S. Capitol. And in that photo, if you're looking left to right, is Vinny Lopez, Syracuse, New York, who was president at that time. The late Barry Thomas, who was at that point immediate past president. Ralph Hogan, who you'll hear from later today. was on our board of directors, and then Chris Imlay, our general counsel since 1980, and then myself on the right. But we were all in town. We actually did visit the offices of many House members and a couple of senators as well. We were pushing more engineering representation at the FCC, particularly at the commissioner level. We also did regulatory visits at the FCC on that trip. But although it's not something that we do many times a year by any means, but every so often we'll have a delegation of SBE leadership go to Washington and meet our representatives and especially meet our regulatory leadership people as well.
Awesome. And it sure would be great if we had some real engineering representation at the FCC at the board level. Yeah, I don't have no idea, but does the FAA have any pilots board? Maybe not. I don't know. We could get that, and it doesn't seem like we have yet.
Yeah. Well, there's plenty of good engineers at the FCC, but on the engineering or on the FCC commissioner staff, probably pretty much lawyers and economists for the most part.
What's our next picture, Suncast? Oh my!
So this goes back to 1993, and so we were all a little bit younger then. But this was our first satellite cast for SBE National, done that fall as a part of the Broadcasters Clinic held in Madison, Wisconsin every year. And the gentleman at the podium is Leonard Charles, who's a former board member of SBE many years ago and a longtime director of engineering at TV stations in Madison. He was the chairman of the chapter and presided over this 1 hour satellite cast that we did about SBE. Immediately to his left, as we're looking at it, to the left, Chuck Kelly, who was SBE president at the time, and Chuck, of course, is still active in the business. Terry Bond, who's now retired, also a past president of SBE. Chris Imlay again, and then myself at the end of the table. So I had only been with SBE for a little over a year by the time when that was taken. So that's 27 years ago.
You were the new kid on the table there, weren't you?
Very classic too, don't you think?
Yeah. All right, good. That's a great look at the past. What's next here, Suncast?
Well, I thought this would be a good one to throw in because your co-host is in this. And, Chris, he's on the staff at SBE full time. But back in the day, in the mid first decade of the 2000s, Chris was president of the SBE. And this is a shot of actually the end of his 2 years as president, holding the president's plaque and receiving the traditional book that we make up each year for each president of all the SBE signals that were published during his term. But again, it just represents, I think, a lot of the people that have taken the time, the dedication to get that far in the organization at the national level. And I thought it was a good picture, so we put it in.
Despite Chris, what's your remembrance? What's your remembrance of this occasion, Chris? Could you tell us?
Thank goodness it's over.
That's what I said too, Chris.
I know that's what it is. And then the funny thing is that, of course, I spent 2 terms as immediate past president with Barry Thomas as president, and then I ran and I sat another term on the board. What was I thinking?
And of course, Chris, you served as the chairman of our certification committee for probably 5 years, anyways.
Yeah, before I was president, that's true. I was certification committee chair, and then, like a lot of past presidents, it's funny. I'll mention this too. When I first moved to Kansas City in 1997. I talked to several past presidents of the SBE, and I kind of wondered why they didn't seem to be so involved as they were at one time. And, what was that all about? And the common answer was, I did my time. I did what I wanted to accomplish, and it's time for someone else to step up and take the reins. And I thought, okay, that's fine. Well, then, of course, I turned into that position, and I realized that was a very clean and polished answer that they all gave me. The reality is it's kind of that, okay, I just need to step away for a little while. I need a break. And that's what I did too. But then I came around and you hired me to be a staff member in 2015. So I've been with the SBE now for 5 full years.
Mm-hmm.
Chris and John, that's got to say something about John's leadership abilities. That Chris, you would have gotten to know John so well as your term as president of the SBE, and then accepted an invitation to come work there. That does say something good about John, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it does. It actually does. And it's also kind of interesting that when I was president, he reported to me. And now that I'm member communications director, I report to him. Boy, how that's funny how that turned around.
And I think it worked out very well.
Good deal. Well, we have another picture. Suncast, what's next?
Well, this again, we're talking about the SBE presidents, and this is on the wall in the hallway of the SBE National Office, our little president's gallery. There have been 31 presidents of SBE, and they're all depicted here. Actually, this was taken before our current president, Wayne Pacina, was added to that wall. He is there now, if you were go to visit today. But some great people and stalwarts of this industry have been presidents of SBE over time. And if you can see it in the far left upper hand corner, you see John Battison, the first president of SBE, and it goes down from there. So it's just our tribute to those folks that have made that commitment.
I hope everybody else in the office is wearing a mask right now, because none of these guys are. Hey, if you've just joined us, I want to welcome you in. We're talking to John Poray. He's the executive director of the Society of Broadcast Engineers. I'm Kirk Harnack, along with Chris Shearer. And John, some months ago, announced his retirement as the executive director of SBE, and we're wishing John a very fond farewell. And right now, we're going through some accomplishments and to just give you some insight as to what goes on in the world of SBE as an organization and some of its accomplishments. We're going to talk about those. Also, coming up a little bit later on the show, Ralph Hogan will join us by way of interview to talk about a brand new certification for ATSC 3 television. So that's coming up too. And so now let's move on with our pictures and remembrances from John's time here.
Well, this picture, this is just from September. And in the light blue shirt is Joe Snelson, another past president of SBE, and Wayne Pacina, our current president. And we had just finished interviewing the 3 finalist candidates for the executive director position to take my place as of January 1st. And it was kind of a little bit of a celebratory dinner. We did social distance the entire time they were here, except for this picture. And we did make that exception, but that was all of about 3 seconds in a restaurant nearby. But I wanted to kind of give a shout out to these 2 people, our entire search committee. There were 5 of them on that committee, including Jim Leifert, Andrea Cummis, and Chris Shearer, who had to join us by Zoom for those interviews. Wayne and Joe, though, they flew up from Texas. And, in September when things were, still shut down quite a bit around the country, but they came up and felt that as president and search committee chair, as Joe was, that they needed to be here in person to meet the candidates in person. And it was a good couple of days. And I just feel blessed that we had that kind of leadership for SBE. And, for Wayne, he's had an interesting first year as president. I greeted him a couple of months after he took office with my news that I plan to retire in 12 months. And then about 2 months later, he inherited the COVID-19 pandemic and all of that brought with it. So he's had a not a normal year for president. And of course, now he's in his second one-year term. He'll be president through this coming October, middle of October. And hoping for him, as well as everybody else, that as 2021 unfolds, we'll have the opportunity to meet in person and do some of the traditional things that we've done in the past.
And I'd like to actually clarify, I think it was just a slip of the tongue. I was not on the search committee, but I think another Chris was. Not Chris Shearer, but...
I'm sorry. I got Chris Shearer on the brain. Chris Imlay, if I misspoke,
yes.
But General Counsel.
Make sure we give Chris the right credit. Yep.
That's right. Chris Imlay and Andrea Cummis, our vice president, and Jim Leifert, our immediate past president, all served with Wayne and Joe on that committee.
Well, now's a good time, I think, to talk about the incoming executive director. We have some more pictures to share. They're a bit more of a personal nature that John wanted to share, and I'm looking forward to seeing some. They'll bring a smile to your lips and a sparkle to your eye. But John, since we were just talking about the search committee, what can you tell us about the new executive director for SBE?
Well, that is Jim Ragsdale, and Jim's a great person. We've had the opportunity to be together either in person or via Zoom probably a half a dozen times now in the last few weeks. He comes, his most recent experience comes as Vice President of Finance at Anderson University, which is located about 40 miles north of Indianapolis. And he has worked at other organizations in the Indianapolis area during the course of his career, primarily on the finance end, but a lot of management experience from that standpoint. And I think SBE members, when they get to meet him, whatever that is, will find that he's a personable, friendly, and capable person. And again, he'll start January 1st, I guess January 4th. That'll be the first business day of the new year. And I know he's chomping at the bit to get started.
Some advice to Jim: bring your camera, take a lot of pictures, and someday you might have as much to share as John has. I'm sure you've given Jim Ragsdale, the new incoming executive director, advice. Maybe advice for the membership that's watching right now. What advice do you have for us in dealing with, working with, interacting with an executive director?
Oh, well, let him be new for the first 6 months. That's wherever you go, you got to milk that for all it's worth. Be new. I'm new. Hey, I'm going to make a mistake here or two, but, reach out to him if you have a chance. And he'll be certainly reaching out to a lot of our leadership and chapter chairs and so on. But it's a big organization from that standpoint. But, I'm hoping that in October of 2021, hopefully we're going to have not only the NAB show, but SBE will be holding its national meeting as a part of the NAB show as well in Las Vegas. So if you're going to be out there in the middle of October next year, go by that SBE booth and introduce yourself to Jim Ragsdale.
Are there now? Jim may be watching, so maybe we can't answer this question fully. But are there any initiation rites that you tell us about? We can put Jim through.
We gave him the secret handshake, and he'll probably just tell him to wear the most uncomfortable shoes he can find when he goes to Las Vegas before he walks around the convention center. But that's probably the biggest initiation right there.
Has he been given a voltmeter yet?
And a little greenie.
Greenie, that's right, a voltmeter greenie. All right, let's continue on with the pictures. We've got some great personal remembrances right now. What's next here?
Well, this goes back about 21 years ago when I was only 14, and this is actually the first office I worked in for SBE. This is at Keystone at the Crossing area, for anybody who might be familiar with Indianapolis. But it was on a weekend, because back then I was a coat and tie guy 5 days a week. And so my wife actually was, I was newly married, and she came in and grabbed this shot of me relaxing at my desk. And, funny as it is, some of the stuff I see back there in the credenza 21 years ago is still in my office today.
Has it been dusted?
Once or twice.
Okay, I wouldn't want something sitting there that long.
I think the light bulb in the lamp is the same bulb, though.
And so is this picture about 27, 28 years old?
Yeah, it's 1999, I believe.
Oh, 99. It's 99. Sorry.
Yeah, and we were in this office. SBE was in this office space about 10 years. I was there 8 of those years. And in 2001, we moved a couple of miles away, and then 5 years later moved to the office building that we are in now, right across the street, actually. And we've been there almost 15 years now.
So what's the next picture? Is it a more up-to-date office? Let's see.
Well, there it is. There's my office today at our current location, and I know 99.9% of our members never get to see the SBE national office, and that's what it looks like today, or at least my part of it. And that map on the wall, I know you can't see it from here, but there's a dot on the map for every SBE chapter, and also I keep little pins in the map where our national board of directors are, just so I can kind of keep track.
There's apps for that nowadays. You can watch their every
Yeah,
move.
that's right. But there's a pin in Nashville, Tennessee for you, Kurt.
I see that right in the middle of Tennessee. That's awesome.
That's right.
Awesome.
Yep.
All right. We have some funny things to remember. I think we have an elevator episode up next here. What's this?
Well, I've gotten to travel quite a bit for SBE.
Sorry, I skipped one. Yeah.
Okay. Well, either way, I've gotten to travel quite a bit for SBE over the years. And, there's lots of celebrities in broadcast engineering, right? Most of them aren't household names, but occasionally I got to be around some notable people. This is kind of funny. Way back in 1993, I was invited to the RTNDA, that's the Radio Television News Directors Association, now known as the Radio and Television Digital News Association. They moved the letters around a little bit.
How about that?
But they invited me to their national meeting, national conference, that year in Dallas, Texas. Now this picture is doctored up tremendously, but I was given the VIP treatment at their awards dinner, placed at the head table for the dinner, and seated next to the lady you see here next to me, June Lockhart. Which, if you're old enough,
it looks exactly like June Lockhart.
That's right, and it was. I sat next to June Lockhart, and who I grew up with watching as Lassie's mom, I like to say, and of course was on Lost in Space and a bunch of old movies and that sort of thing. But she, not a news director by any means, but she always hung around this group. Somehow she kind of became this adopted mascot or fan or whatever, and they treated her like royalty. And I got to sit next to her at that dinner and have a nice chat.
That's awesome. Suncast, what's our next picture here? There we go. There's the elevator
shot. And again, back in Dallas, I think this is for the NAB radio show. And again, the early 90s, or actually, yeah, it was probably 1999 again, maybe, because that's Pat Buchanan on the right. Now, again, the doctored picture, but I actually rode the elevator down the hotel about 20 floors with Pat Buchanan, who had a syndicated radio show, but at that year particularly was a candidate in the primaries for the Republican nomination for president. So he was a fairly big celebrity at the time. And that was my little brush with him for about 20 seconds going down the elevator.
I hear he's got a picture of you as well.
He may. He may.
Hey, you wouldn't believe it. I rode the elevator with John Poray. head of a big organization.
That's right.
That's
now,
right.
only
Okay,
one person in an elevator at a time. So
that's right. That's right. Yeah, indeed. All right. What's next to Suncast?
Well, this is the last one in this little series here. I've had a lot of airplane flights, and I don't usually sit in the front of the plane. I can tell you that. But on one flight back to Indianapolis, there was Ray Charles in the front of the plane with traveling with one of his people, I guess, heading for the Indianapolis Jazz Fest. But I had seen Ray Charles in concert back in the mid '90s, and I immediately recognized him as I was walking down the aisle. I still had about 25 rows to get to my seat, I think. But so that's another little brush with celebrity people there in my time with SBE.
That's always fun. That's fun to come across people like that. And I saw him too in concert in the mid '90s, but I didn't get that close to him at all. I think I was 28 rows back or something like that. Wow. Well, yeah, you were too, but we weren't on the same plane. He was on the stage, and I was just in the audience. Yeah. Oh, John, this is good. What's next? What do we have? Another couple pictures here from your life.
Well, people have asked me for the last 10 or 11 months, what are you going to do in retirement? And one of the things is spend time with my grandchildren. And these are my two grandkids. They live about just under an hour from me up on the north side of Indianapolis. And my older son's 2 children and his wife. And they are visiting me here in my actual SBE office last January before things all got shut down. And I'm showing them something on the computer screen. I don't remember what, but they were very attentive. And I'm glad we did that then, because that was the first and last time that they got to visit their grandfather at his office before retiring.
I can tell you right
this
now
is
that
the membership database, kids.
I think I actually, it was my screensaver, Chris, and you can imagine what that was.
Toasters. I can tell you right now, you and those 2 pretty girls have different barbers.
Well, let me just, it all do. Now, the one on the right, can you go back to that picture?
Yeah, okay, sure. I think Suncast can go back to that picture.
The one on the right is my grandson. He's just got hair that you wouldn't believe.
Oh,
That's
my
Reese.
goodness. Look at that.
That's Reese. Yep. And my granddaughter, Reese is about a little over 3 years old now. And Riley will be 2 years old in the middle of January. She's on the left there. So,
well, don't tell Reese I said he's a cutie patootie, but he's a cute young man.
Well, it probably happened before, but they're both cuties, I can tell you.
Yeah, yeah. All right, next picture. I think this may be the last one, but it's.
Well, there he is again, sharing. And again, in the category of what are you going to do in retirement, I've got a number of plans and things to looking forward to, and my wife as well. But I am a model railroader. That's a passion hobby I have. And my 3-year-old grandson just loves the model trains. He has some trains at home, the kind that you push around on a wooden track. But when he comes over to our house, he can't wait to get down to the basement and run trains with Grandpa. So that's
wait, is that your set? Is that
that's a piece? That's a look at a small piece of my train layout. Yep, in my basement.
I'll emphasize it's a small piece. Some of us have seen it in person.
I've seen this picture for a few days because of our pre-show meeting, John. I thought you 2 were at a museum or something. I thought you were at a train, a place where they have model trains, but no, it's your house.
Yeah, that's right.
Good
and it's a big, it's about over 800 square feet. So it keeps me busy. My wife always knows where I am.
What scale is that? Is it HO or something else?
That's HO. Popular scale.
Yeah.
So, John, you said you're a model railroader. Is that you are an enthusiast of the model railroads, or you're a railroader who is looked up to upon by others in the hobby? You are a model.
It's railroad. The latter, I believe, or okay. No, it's I'm one of many model people who model railroads. Try to do that prototypically. So
I think the answer to Chris's question, with all due respect, is yes, Chris, both.
Yes, right. Yes.
All right. Well,
you hit 2 nails on the head there, Chris. Exactly. John, certification. When you started with SBE, what, about 20? I'm sorry, was it 27, 28 years ago?
Just over 28 years ago, 1992, October 1st. Yeah.
And how important, or when did certification really start up at SBE?
Well, certification goes back 45 years. And in fact, this is the 45th anniversary this year for it. So back in the mid 70s. And, by the time I got to SBE, it was well established and growing. There were new levels being added. Specialist certifications were being created. Just after I got there, the radio operator's handbook and certification, and then followed immediately by the television operator's handbook and certification, were both published by SBE. And literally thousands of operators have taken that course and become certified, SBE certified radio or TV operators. And fast forward 28 years, you're going to talk to Ralph here in a little bit about the new ATSC 3 certification. That, is an important piece of our ongoing effort to stay up with technology and broadcasting. And so I'm looking forward to hear Ralph's update on that as well.
John, I'd like to cover one small topic before we go to Ralph, and that is I know that you have personally worked with a number of other state associations or state boards, state governments to help make sure that an SBE certification means something or is not diminished by some other state rules or regulations in different states. And maybe I've got the texture of this a little bit wrong, but help me understand why, or maybe what you have helped do to make sure that an SBE certification not only means something, but continues to mean something. I've taken some tests myself. They are proctored. It's a professional environment, even if it's done, with a proctor, maybe at their radio station or office. But I've always felt like, this is a real test, and you're being tested on real knowledge with questions that are relevant and pretty much up to date. Talk to me a little bit about why SBE certification means something.
Well, to start with, it's because I think our certification committee over the years has taken the responsibility seriously to keep the questions up to date and to make sure that it was not just an exam that you could memorize a bunch of practice questions and then turn around a day later and take the test and pass. You need to have some background and experience for most of our certifications. And when when you've passed it, that you know your stuff. But there's security on our questions. They're not released outside of that committee. And as far as the industry goes, the not only the committee but the board of directors and our network of chapter certification chairs around the country and staff have worked hard to promote the certification program and let people know the importance, not only our members, but their employers, of having somebody who's certified by the SBE, that they know their stuff. And, we're pleased to have more than 3,000 people hold SBE certifications today in force. One of the things from a governmental relations standpoint that we've had to kind of work hard on is the fact that in the last 2 years, many states have looked at enacting legislation that would limit the ability of private associations like SBE to conduct certification programs. Most of it had to do with trying to make sure there were not barriers put in place for people who wanted to get jobs. And that's all very good, and nobody would disagree with that. But at the same time, they really mistakenly saw certifications as something that kept people from that. But of course, we know that whether it's SBE or the medical professions, other engineering professions, that without some standards set that people need to meet, the health and safety of citizens would be in question if unqualified people did not hold those certifications. So SBE became charter members of the Professional Certification Coalition, which now has over 100 associations as members. And they monitor and lobby, when necessary, various state legislatures when they have bills come forward that would restrict certification or our ability to conduct certification programs within their state. And that's an ongoing process right now.
Well, on the topic of certification, probably no better time to go ahead and get to our interview with Ralph Hogan about this new certification for ATSC 3. That's the new television standard. It's already out. People are using it. It's in probably close to 30 or 40 cities in the U.S. at this point. Maybe not quite that many, but close. So hang on. We're going to have a final word from John Poray right after we hear from Ralph Hogan. So let's have a look at that interview with Ralph. It's Kirk Harnack along with Ralph Hogan. Ralph is serving with SBE as the committee chair for the certification committee. Ralph, welcome in. Good to see you.
Good morning. How are you?
Morning, afternoon, whatever time it is.
Yeah, it's sometime.
I couldn't let a moment pass without at least commenting on your amazing beard. I'm so used to seeing you clean shaven, and here you are with this beautiful Santa Claus beard. What's the story there, quickly?
Well, March, we were all sent home because of the COVID virus from our offices. So we actually, I've been working from home since then. And because of not being able to go out, I've just let my beard grow, and I haven't been doing a whole lot of interaction other than Zoom meetings and telephone calls with other staff members. So just being lazy, I just let it grow. And at this point, I'm just ready to be a backup for Santa, and just in case he doesn't make it through his whole world tour, and ready to fill in as necessary.
I'm glad you said that, because if you didn't, I was going to mention you're on deck in case the batter strikes out for some reason. Well, we're here to talk about this new certification for ATSC 3.0, and this certification has a lot of challenges to come up with it. Why don't you kind of give us the genesis? How did this get started with the SBE thinking, we need to offer a certification in ATSC 3.0? How did that get started?
It actually got started at a CES meeting with ATSC. SBE attends or a member of ATSC, and we were approached that since this new standard was coming out, that it would probably be appropriate to come up with a certification that went along with the new standard. That was 2 years ago. Normally it doesn't take this long to actually develop a standard, but because of everything being new, the standard was not actually fully ratified yet. There was no product, no experience, no subject matter experts, no hardware, really nothing to build upon for an engineer to take and actually sit for a certification exam. So it's taken us a fair amount of time. We've utilized the volunteers who worked on the ATSC standard to develop some of the standard questions. But now that we have a couple of years under our belt, the model stations that were being built around the country, the engineers who worked on those projects, we went to them who had developed experience in developing those model stations to give us input on developing questions that might be appropriate for the standard. So that's how we got started, and that's how we developed the question database. And part of the process that we go through in developing this database is that we go through a number of trial tests. We call them beta tests, to kind of test the validity of the database. We go on some volunteers who are knowledgeable in the subject, have them take the exams, get feedback from them on the questions, and we've gone through 3 iterations of the beta test, and we've just announced a few weeks ago that we're ready to actually have the test go into production, and it will be offered in February with our first exams of the year. And the actual registration for that exam is until December 31. So anyone who's interested in taking the exam, they need to register for the February exam. They need to register prior to the end of the year.
That's got to be fascinating to do that iterative process to figure out what questions you thought might be valuable really turn out to be, well, that one doesn't really matter, or it's redundant, or it doesn't really go to the heart of what a person's knowledge needs to be. And I guess in a certification exam, that's what you really want to test for. You want to test is this person knowledgeable about the technology, the state of the art, so that they could implement and perhaps troubleshoot in this area of expertise. Am I right about that, or is there some additional consideration?
You're right on. That's exactly what we're after in any of the exams. The challenge is with not just this one, but all of the certification exams, is that the technology moves, and we need to keep the exams current. So when you have 4 or 5 or more hundred or more questions in the database, purging the ones that are no longer relevant and adding new ones is a real challenge for the committee.
Is there a target number of questions in the database, in the pool of questions that you go for?
Since the exam is composed of 50 multiple choice questions, and depending on the certification, some may have essay questions that go along with it. We tried to have enough of the questions in the database, since they're randomly selected and every test is customizable. We would like to have, if we had 15 people taking the test, and there's 50 questions per exam, that there's a large enough pool there that you're not giving everyone the same questions.
Sure.
So there's not a hard number, if that's what you're asking.
Gotcha. You mentioned that the first exams for these, I believe you said, are going to be given in February. The deadline to make application is the end of December, the end of this month. If a person makes application to take the exam for certification, what kind of study materials might be available to help them get ready for this test?
Well, actually, there's a number of areas that can be explored to get ready for the exam. One is, a key one would be the actual ATSC standard itself. Since it's built on a layered model, there's a number of different layers. The standards are available. We have those published on our links published on our website. Also, Pearl has a model station here in Phoenix, and they've written basically a station manual. It's now in revision 9 to show you how much changes have occurred in the past couple of years. That is a very good, it's a resource manual, and it's a very good manual that covers a lot of the standard material, but it also covers a lot of the practical aspects of what you need to do to actually build a facility and operate a facility. We also have webinars that SBE has put together over the past couple of years in conjunction with ATSC, and those webinars were different modules. I think we had 10 modules on the ATSC series, and that were mainly focused around the different layers of the ATSC standard. So there's a lot of resource material out there. IEEE VTS has also developed webinars over the past couple of years covering ATSC 3.0, and those are also available through the IEEE VTS website.
So for more information on this, our members can go to sbe.org, and there's a certification category right up near the top of the page, and click certification. This is one of the specialist certifications, like AM directional, or what I was looking at some of these earlier, the 8 VSB specialist, or the digital radio specialist. So this falls under the category of these specialties, doesn't it?
Yes, and the specialties are a little different than our normal certifications in that it requires a prerequisite. You have to have one of the broadcast certifications prior to sitting for the specialist. So if you don't have any certification with SBE, you cannot just go directly and sit for the specialist exam. That's why we call it specialist as opposed to just a general certification. But you have to have one of the 5 different levels of engineering certifications within SBE before you can sit for any of the specialists.
Ralph, one more question before we go. A person who then obtains the ATSC 3 specialist certification, what might they be expecting in terms of enhancing their desirability in the marketplace? I guess as more and more markets bring out ATSC 3 television stations and transmission systems, should engineers expect to a bit more respect and maybe a bit better position because of this certification.
I would certainly hope so, because the any of the certifications, not just with SBE, but any certification that an individual obtains through work and knowledge and study and practical experience, that demonstrates to their employer that they have gone the extra mile to obtain a certification and demonstrate their knowledge.
Ralph Hogan, thank you very much. Ralph is the chairman of the certification committee. Ralph, I appreciate your work very much. I know that the thousands of SBE members appreciate the work that you and your committee members do to make these certifications meaningful and also obtainable. So thank you very much for this work and for this new work on the ATSC 3 certification. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Kurt.
And if you'd like to go ahead and get that test under your belt for ATSC 3, just SBE.org website and look for certain, and you'll find it under there. All right. It's Kirk Harnack along with Chris Shearer, and we're talking with John Poray, about to wrap it up. I want to give this opportunity to John to express anything else he would like to on the occasion of his looming retirement from as executive director after these 28 plus years at SBE. And maybe also, well, you know what, before we do that, I need to ask Chris if he's got any last questions that maybe I failed to ask, and then we'll let John talk to us a bit. Chris?
Well, not really, since I actually work remotely too. I'm in what we call the SBE West office in Kansas City. It's not like I can go claim his chair or swap desks or go steal office supplies when he's out the door. So, but Megan, Scott, Debbie, or Kathy might have eyes on something. We'll have to keep an eye on that kind of thing, won't we?
And I've got a feeling if there were any model trains in John's office, they're all probably back in the bunker now, right?
That's true. By the way,
Yeah.
I do have my greenie and my bluey. I keep on hand at all times. So,
John,
from the earlier reference,
I'd like to give you the last word. I know that I speak for everybody when I say that we appreciate your incredible service, your leadership, and your dedication, but maybe there's something else you'd like to add to all that.
need to unmute.
Yeah, well, thank you, Kirk, and I appreciate the opportunity to be on the program today. And you know, before I say just the last word or two, I did want to make a plug for something that Chris talked about at the beginning of the program, and that's the TPT, the Technical Professional Training Program that begins January 1st. I think this is really important for our industry, and I'm so glad that SBE is moving out with this, that combines education, different educational pieces that we have in place, and to move it out to stations, networks, and state associations to help them educate newer or brand new or still thinking about people coming into broadcast engineering as a career, and but coupling our certification program with our extensive education webinar library, our SBE Engineering Handbook, our mentor program, which is a huge component of this. It's been a great program, especially these last few years, and our our certification preview program as well, the 5 elements that make up that program. So I really hope stations will grab onto that and work to educate the new people coming up, and attract more people as well. So yeah, you know, I never thought when I came to SBE over 28 years ago that I would still be here today. I thought I probably would have moved on, as those in association management tend to do, and you know, work for other associations along the line before I was done. But you know, it just became something that I couldn't pull myself away from. There are great people in SBE and great people in broadcast engineering, and I've just found them always to be so friendly and genuine and dedicated to the work that they do. It's not easy, and there are certainly challenges, and especially these days, for people that work in the business. but they embraced me, I think, the longer I was here. And we always had some new challenges to work on, and things to do that we could help the careers of our members with. And so that's why I stayed so long, and glad I did. Was able to build a lot of relationships with people that I hope will continue on after I'm retired, and hopefully at some point I'll see a lot of you at a future broadcast event down the road, whether it be an NAB show or maybe our national meeting or something like that. So thanks very much.
John, I'd like to see you at a train event, or maybe if I ever get an invitation, come by your bunker there and see your train outfit. That I don't know an engineer who doesn't love trains.
You're more than welcome, and believe it or not, you probably wouldn't be surprised to know that there are quite a few model railroaders in the broadcast engineering ranks, and some pretty well-known people as well in the industry. It's a popular hobby. So,
do you have a small model radio or TV station as part of your layout?
I actually have a radio tower with a flashing beacon at the top of a 13-story building on the layout.
Of course you do.
and you know,
That's
just a funny story here for a minute. Probably 9 or 10 years ago, our executive committee was here in town for a meeting, and the late Barry Thomas was on that at the time, and they all came down for dinner at my house, and I took him downstairs to show him the train layout, and Barry looked at that tower and he said, "It looks great, but you didn't paint it right. I didn't have the red and white correct. I didn't have red at the top." So about a month after they left, I took that tower down and repainted it, and it's now correct.
So all that time, there was a note tam out there on the train layout tower.
You could have told Barry that, hey, this building and this tower are so old that I just did it to comply with the original instrument of authorization from the FCC, and Barry would have had to just go. Yeah, his grandfather. That's right. John, it's been a delight and a pleasure to have you on the show today and to share some of your accomplishments and remembrances, memories over the last 28 years. So thank you so very much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Kirk and Chris, for hosting today.
Chris Shearer, Communications Director, back to you to kind of wrap the show up. Thank you.
Very good. Well, again, thanks, John, for being our guest, and also Ralph on his recorded segment as well. This has been the SBE WEBxtra, the SBE chapter of the web. We present this monthly, and we hope you'll join us each time. We'll post the replay on our YouTube channel, usually within a day. The SBE WEBxtra is sponsored by Catrine, whom we thank for the support. Catrine, unique experience, individual solutions, reliable performance. If you hold SBE certification, viewing the SBE WEBxtra qualifies you for 1/2 point in Category G under attendance. It's just like attending a local chapter meeting. And that does it for this installment of the SBE WEBxtra from the Society of Broadcast Engineers, the Association for Broadcast and Multimedia Technology Professionals. Thanks again to our guests, John Poray and Ralph Hogan. On behalf of Kirk Harnack, we will see you next month.